You are listening to the Winning to Talk Tasker podcast, and this is our interview with Adam Schindler and Brian Netto, co-directors of Don't Move, now available to watch on Netflix.
Yes, it was challenging. I mean, we told ourselves we do not want to go into her head. We don't want to hear voiceover. We don't want to hear her thoughts. We want to just live in these moments. That's where suspense is for us. It's taking your time to really feel what she's going through.
Because I think more than anything, we viewed this as a suspense film. It's a thriller with lots of elements of suspense, some elements of horror as well. But just living in that stuff, that's the stuff we love. You know, we love a good film that just has you gripping the seat when you're watching it. So that's what we were going for.
Hey guys.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
We're good.
You're great.
We're good.
To start us off, could this be the first movie where you are officially both credited as directors?
It is.
First film.
Yeah.
Yes, we worked on another project with Sam Raimi for Quibi called 50 States of Fright. It was an anthology series that we also got our first kind of like directing credit together. We've been directing movies since fourth grade, so we've known each other, we're childhood friends or whatever doing it. But that was like, 50 States was the first television show that we got, and this is the first feature that we were both labeled as director.
Mm-hmm.
And is this like an administrational or guild type of detail, or the first time you are actually co-directing feature?
We've been directing before, prior to this. I think on the other two films, you know, we're from Minnesota, so we were kind of emulating what the Coen brothers were doing at one point, and we had heard that there was an interesting reason why one of them took director and one of them took producer, and we were like, oh, that's interesting. Let's see if we can take that approach. But I think once we got two films into that process, we realized, well, we're both here doing the same job.
We're all doing the same. Yeah, we're doing the same thing.
We might as well just make it official. Put a ring on it and become co-directors. So yeah, that was the decision. That was the decision-making progress. But like you said, we've been doing it since we were 9 years old. We've been running around with making little movies since then. So for us, we've always been partners. However we were credited, we've always been partners.
And does this little or not so little detail add to your experience and relationship with this gig?
I mean, I think it helps. I think we're lucky to just have somebody that I've known for 90% of my life to be able to like kind of like be two sides of the same brain.
Is it 90%?
85 maybe?
Jeez.
I don't know, something like that. Well, since fourth grade.
Yeah.
Did the calculation. I don't know, something like that. But it's basically, you know, you have like two sides of the same brain. We, you know, producers are always asked this when they're new to kind of us and our directing style. Like, how do you guys direct? Somebody handle the camera, somebody handle the actors. And it's not like that. We handle everything. We love every aspect of it. So
I think maybe producers or someone from the outside looking in might have viewed it as differently in their eyes. But for us, it's never deviated. It's always been the same. We conceive of these concepts together. We write together when we write. We obviously direct, we've edited together. So for us, the process is never the same. However we're labeled, it's always the same process.
Love that.
Yeah.
And this is your second time taking on a script written by TJ and David, correct?
Correct.
The first being Intruders.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys need or search for in a script penned by someone else to be able to connect with it?
Well, at least for Don't Move was an idea that Brian and I came up with that we brought TJ and David onto. We crafted the script over the kind of the middle part of the pandemic to the end of the pandemic, and we kind of charged them with this idea of like, can we do this genre exercise where a woman paralyzed for a majority of this movie? Can you do that? And then obviously there are sequences that will make that thrilling and exciting, and that those kind of ideas kind of popped into our head immediately, like, okay, we could do this, this, and this. But then also kind of charging ourselves with how do you create a character that makes you feel something, that makes you want them to stay alive and care, you know? And TJ and David are great at that. They did that in Shut-In, which was a spec script that we came aboard, that they had written. And, you know, we've kind of been friends and coworkers since. So we knew this idea would be in great hands with them. We all have the same love of the same films. We all kind of grew up loving all the same things, the same kind of outlooks on life. So they're just kind of great partners, and it felt like the perfect fit.
And their strengths are character within a genre setting.
Yeah.
So the previous film Intruders was a spec that came to us and we fell for it. But this was something we knew the concept was going to be fun and just this really great idea and this central character going on this journey. But then we thought we need people that can create these characters and make them multifaceted, because we knew that we were going to have a smaller cast. And that means if there's less characters and they have to be interesting to be on screen this amount of time, we have to constantly be learning about them. And then you also have to put them in scenarios and these great set pieces that makes it entertaining over the course of the runtime. So their skill set just lent itself to this, and they responded to the idea. And I think once we figured out the journey that this character was going to go on and then built the antagonist to match that, it went so quickly. They were able to turn around a script pretty quickly.
Is most of the film taking place in nature a result of the pandemic, trying to break out of all that, or trying to separate the protagonist from any sort of life or society that could help her?
Yeah. I mean, I think a little bit of both. Like I said, it was crafted during the pandemic. So I guess there was a yearning from all of us to be like free and running through the forest and being out of our little boxes. But, it was also the idea of, we thought it would be fun and interesting and something that we hadn't really seen before, where you take this really terrible event that happens and you put it in this most beautiful place. A genre film that takes place it takes place all during the day, over a short amount of period of time, and you're looking at beautiful wilderness and mountains and trees, and then having this really terrifying event happen within it. We thought the juxtaposition of that was really interesting.
It was a challenge.
Yeah.
I think it was a challenge. And I think the other thing is, the character is going to this location for a very specific reason. So this character is going there, and if they're going to go to a place like this, there has to be beauty. It has to be this incredibly jaw-dropping location and setting. And so it just made sense that then what was unfolding afterwards would take place in an outdoor setting. So, I think initially we thought, well, if we're outdoors, it's the daylight. The challenges that normally you find for productions, which is, all the not interesting, fun, creative stuff, but more like the costs, the equipment, all those sorts of things. We thought it would make the film a bit more makeable, something that's more easily produced and kept the budget low. But then obviously it presented all other challenges where now you have to deal with daylight changing and shifting over the course of a day. You have to deal with weather and rain and continuity and all those things. So, there's nothing easy about filmmaking, as anybody knows that listens to the show or has watched films or has listened to filmmakers speak. There's nothing easy. You're trading in one potential set of issues for another. But I think the biggest thing was this film has a heightened sense of reality. It should feel plausible, but obviously it is an exercise in genre. So it should be fun and it should be interesting to look at. But within that, I think for us, it was more than anything just going, all right, how do we make this entertaining and challenge ourselves with telling a story like this in the broad daylight?
And also making sure that you shoot a movie in a forest, most of the film. And in making that interesting, it sounds like, that it can get really monotonous looking at trees for an hour and a half. And let's challenging ourselves with how do you make each sequence feel unique to this portion of the forest, or make sure that it feels like she's progressing through something as her body is, slowly in decline, and finding those unique locations within the forest to make it visually interesting, for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it took a page from Swiss Army Man. That film is probably more in the woods than we are in this film. And we have a few things where we're interiors. But what they did was they always made sure wherever they were, whatever that backdrop was, it had a unique landmark, whether it was a rock or it was a ravine or something interesting. You weren't just looking at trees and leaves the entire time. That was something that we picked up from watching that film. And we charged ourselves with finding interesting backdrops for those moments when we are in the woods.
As a part of the film, we get a surprisingly big journey. Quite the ground covered down the road, through the forest, down the river, and the road again. I don't want you to give me an exact square mileage or anything like that, but how did this look in real life, logistically? And what did this aspect of the story mean for the production in general?
Yeah. We shot in Bulgaria, is where we shot the film. Luckily, New Bojana Studios there in Bulgaria, Sofia, Bulgaria. This actual studio butts right up against the national forest there. Literally, the back gates open up into the national forest or whatever.
Fascinating.
So all the infrastructure, for the most part, there was other sequences we shot outside of the studio, but for the most part, most of the infrastructure could be at the actual studio. And then the national forest behind it, we used for a lot of it. We built things and what have you. But that national forest has so many different unique looks from pine trees to balsam trees to rocky formations to creeks and rivers. And
the lake and the river were separate locations that we had to drive out to. And then the opening sequence, which we shot on our first day on the cliffside, that was 3 hours away out of Sofia. But we, when we got there, we said, again, the reason why she's at this location on this particular day is this is a place where people would go with their families. They would hike. They would look at this gorgeous backdrop. So we knew we needed that. And so we were willing to make that 3 hour drive with production all the way up to this place and climb up this mountain to get up there because it needed to kind of set the scene for where we were going. So, but
it also happened to be our first day of shooting. Yeah. So it kind of set the tenor for in the entire production. We, at the end of that day, we're like, if we can accomplish this in the amount of time we have here, shoot this entire sequence on the top of a mountain, bringing up all the equipment and all that, if we can accomplish this, it's going to set the right pace for the rest of the production. And it was a nice sigh of relief, but also a nice high five at the end of that day. The first day going, okay, we got this. Like, we're in the right place.
Totally. And despite this huge ground covered, it doesn't feel like this large event film or anything like that. And I mean that in the best possible way. What do you think allows for this to happen, to be this grounded?
Yeah, I mean, the journey, because it's supposed to be real time, right? So, I mean, without much exception, I think it is largely real time. And so for a lot of it, we wanted to think like, all right, I've just got out of one scrape. Now I'm into another one. And then now I'm into another one. So it's like, it is a series of obstacles that they are going on together, either alone at some point and then initially together. So what's the next step? All right, we've got out of this situation. All right, but now there's this next thing.
Yeah, we have the human antagonist, and then nature becomes an antagonist at certain points. So that's where we filled it. It's like when our two characters are not together, how do we make nature be the antagonist and fill in and create that suspense? So again, TJ and David did a remarkable job crafting those sequences and us all tossing around the ideas of how do you make this.
It's like set piece after set piece kind of butted up against. Some of them were smaller moments of it's more tension filled. Some of them are more physicality involved. Some of them are psychological, but they're always these little moments that we lived in for a long time. These sequences are all quite long when you get into them. Some of them 10, 15 minutes long. And so we just lived in the uncomfortable feeling of watching her being immobile in that particular moment, or watching her body start to wind down, or watching her body start to wind back up again. So a lot of it was just saying, all right, in this particular moment, these small victories can lead to hopefully a larger victory a few scenes later as she's starting to get her faculties back. So we really, I think for us, it was really just living in those moments and trying to extract as much suspense out of those as much as possible. Because I think more than anything, we viewed this as a suspense film. It's a thriller with lots of elements of suspense, some elements of horror as well. But just living in that stuff, that's the stuff we love. We love a good film that just has you gripping the seat when you're watching it. So that's what we were going for.
Yeah, and now that you mention how much it is in real time, like, sure, it seems like the logical step to have the protagonist as our entry point and to approach the whole story from her view, but it also has to work from the serial killers, the antagonist's standpoint as well. And then there is this choice of the real time of focusing on the present and relying on the past as little as possible, having it pretty much only as the introduction and little bits and chunks during. Did this level of focus on the current developments of the story pose more of a challenge, or would you say that you could rather have more fun with it?
Yes, it was challenging. I mean, we told ourselves we do not want to go into her head. We don't want to hear voiceover. We don't want to hear her thoughts. We want to just live in these moments. That's where suspense is for us. It's taking your time to really feel what she's going through. Experience it. Like we said, it's an experiential movie. Experience each one of these obstacles that she has to kind of overcome. And we always thought that, that would be the best way to kind of finish Iris's arc. We meet her at a certain place, and when you get to the end of the movie, she's at a very different place. And it's like, how do you, by jumping between her and the antagonist and back and forth, it's like, we just want to be with her. We want to see her. We want, when she loses her faculties, we want to, what's it sound like? Mark Corvin and Michelle Ossisart, phenomenal composers, crafted an amazing score. And we basically told them we wanted to feel like the audience watching this doesn't know if it's score or if it's sound effects or sound mix or what exactly is happening, and make it feel very much all part of the same whole.
And then we knew in the moments when she's immobile, we knew we needed, the script called for us at a certain point when we get to the home, the cabin sequence, at that moment, we kind of hand over the reins of our hopes and fears for the scenario that she's going through to this other character. And it was the one time where we allowed ourselves to say, all right, well, this character is going to stand in. He's going to be her proxy. And he is going to be the one that is going to stand in the way of this threat that's facing her. So we allowed ourselves to have that one moment, but outside of that, it's with her. And in the moments when the two of them together, when you have Richard and the Irish character, that means Richard has to carry the load sometimes. So Richard needs to be interesting. He needs to be written in a way and crafted in a way so that you're constantly learning about him as he goes. He's not a perfect villain.
You don't have to like him.
You don't have to like him.
He has to be watchable and entertaining. And
he has to be interesting.
Yeah.
There's a great many films where you have a character who you despise, but you can't take your eyes off of them. And so a lot of that comes to casting. I mean, first it starts on the page, and then you have to find an actor that can embody that. Someone that you just like, I cannot stand this person, but they are immensely watchable. We just like watching them work. You know, you put this vehicle together with this cast, and you got this script, and it's this really fun genre exercise. You have to trust that people are as interested in Richard in those moments as they would be in Iris. And so we were always confident they would be because, you know, this originated from us. So it was fun to put it all together and see that it held up. It was fun to watch the two of them go back and forth.
As a final thought, and in addition to that, maybe a slightly provocative question, but not too much. Something I really respect about this movie is how realistic and grounded it feels. Because it might just be me, but except for the very strictly real events inspired serial killer films, most of them just take off and go rogue, where I say, okay, let's do that, but then don't try to stay realistic and unrealistic at the same time, only when the realistic part goes for the psychological side of it. It's kind of a case of either or for me. And with the two of you having ventured in both supernatural and natural earthly projects like this, after me going on this little rant, what are your stances on this? Can there be a breach between these two thematic approaches? It's
project by project. I mean, I think, you know, our first film is a psychological horror film. Our second film is a home invasion thriller. And then, you know, the 50 States episode is this fun romp that was very much inspired by the films like Peter Jackson and by Sam. Just kind of that juvenile, the stuff that we loved watching as a kid that was made for the 15-year-old versions of us. But this story, you know, I think more than anything, if you look at the stuff we worked on, we're not afraid to just meet this project where it is. This is where this project lives. And so this project lives in a place where we wanted you to place yourself in the shoes of this protagonist, in this real location, in this interesting setting, with a serial killer who is interesting and charming and complex and, you know, and flawed in some ways. And so for us, it was like, this is the way to approach it. We want to make it feel entertaining. That's the most important thing. It has to be entertaining. But at the same time, we wanted it to feel somewhat plausible. And so we just attacked it this particular way. But I think we'd be able to attack any film anyway if we understood the genre. I think more than anything, we're genre fans and students. So we can look at something and go, this is the approach. This is the way that you attack this particular thing.
I think you just have to be comfortable in making a choice and sticking with it. Even when it gets tough, sometimes in the middle of the shoot or towards the end of the shoot, everybody's tired and you just never deviate from your plan. Have a specific plan, make a choice, don't hedge your bets. I think if you hedge your bets, you start making choices that take people out of the movie. And very much with Don't Move, we were all about making sure every character that is in this movie, and there's not that many, feels like every choice they make, that character would make that choice. And not just throw the script out the window when it's like when I got to how do you
do a set piece here? So let's have it veer this direction.
Yeah,
that wasn't the
The approach is like this character would make this choice. How do you make that thrilling?
One of the inspirations for the film was The Vanishing, the original Vanishing. Love that film. We also love something like Silence of the Lambs, which is, you know, slightly more theatrical, but you have fun with your villain. You like something like a Seven. We're fans of all different approaches to it. There's no right or wrong way in our mind. Even something as kind of heightened and potentially satirical as American Psycho. Great. I think for this particular story, we wanted to attack it this particular way.
Know what movie you're making, and just go 100% in that direction. Yeah. And then hope it works.
Yeah, you can love all these movies you just mentioned and at the same time have your own voice. So
yeah, that's a big thing for us. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, Adam, thank you for your time and for your fascinating insights.
Oh, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.